So then guys, today I have a bit more of a different video for you. I'm not going to talk about laptops, I'm not going to talk about mini PCs. In fact, what I'm going to tell you about is a gaming handheld console. Now, I've never made a video about a gaming handheld console before, so this is going to be a first, but I really want to tell you all about this. This here is the OneXPlayer OneXFly F1 Pro. And I want to be honest with you, I'm absolutely in love with this device. So much so that when I recently went to New York, I was actually playing on this on the plane. It's so portable, so light, and so great. And I want to tell you even more about it. So first of all, let me go over the specs about this device. So this OneXFly F1 Pro, I'm just going to call it the F1 Pro for the sake of this video, actually has an AMD Ryzen AI9 HX 370 inside of it. And that has a 12-core CPU and 24 threads, and in fact, it can go up to 5.1 gigahertz in speed, what's absolutely incredible. It's super fast for this. But it doesn't just stop there. For gaming, it also has the AMD Radeon 890M. And the model that I have right here, it has 32 gigabytes of RAM inside of it and also 1 terabyte NVMe drive inside. But with that 32 gigabytes of RAM, I've actually dedicated 8 gigabytes of RAM for this to actually play games and things like this. Now, for the actual screen on the F1 Pro, we actually have a 1920 by 1080p resolution. But the big highlight to me, this is an OLED display and it has a refresh rate of 144 Hertz. And it is super bright with its 800 nits display built into this. And then for PPI, you know, your pixels per inch, we've got 315. It is super crisp for this display inside of this. Now, the actual design of the F1 Pro is absolutely amazing too. Now, I obviously got a Switch right now. I've also got a Steam Deck, and I've also played on a, Ally ROG by Asus, and all of that. And I would say this is probably the most comfortable handheld I've ever held in my hand. It feels super great. The plastic feels great behind it. It's not too fingerprint sticky or anything like that. The triggers and the buttons are absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I just absolutely love the design of this. And also on this, we've actually got some great kind of extra ports and bits and pieces too. Starting with the top, well, we've actually got a USB 3.2 port, and we've also got a USB-C port here at the top here. You can use your power up to 65-watt charger in this. You've got headphones, you've got your volumes and your power. And then swinging around to the actual bottom of this, you've got another USB-C port where you can also plug in the power here if you wanted to. And then you've also got a micro SD card slot. And in fact, I've actually slotted a 1 terabyte micro SD inside of this. And then for actual sound quality, well, you've actually got Harman speakers, and they're actually firing at the bottom here. So when you're actually holding this console, it doesn't actually get in the way or anything like that. And the sound sounds really crisp and great on here. Now, going back to these USB-C ports at the top and the bottom, well, they actually are USB 4.0. And if you wanted to, you could actually connect up an external GPU to this if you wanted to. You could actually connect an RTX 5090 to this if you really wanted to and play games like that. But the other thing, what you can also do is with that USB-C port is that you can also connect up to, say, your TV if you wanted to do that with a HDMI to USB-C. And this is absolutely fantastic. Connects a Bluetooth controller to this too if you wanted to. But for the purpose of today, I'm just going to show you obviously it is as a console, because this is absolutely amazing. Now, one thing that might be crossing your mind at this stage is obviously with the CPU and GPU being quite powerful for this little device here, obviously, is that going to drain the battery super quick? Well, there are some optimizations what you can do, including the OneXPlayer Game Center. As you can see, what you can just press by a trigger of a button here on the side, and you can pop it out, and you can fiddle around with anything you could want to. So you can fiddle around with the TDP, you can set the wattage. If you want to set it all the way down to 4 watts or push it all the way up to 30 watts, you can also change the fan to be automatic or set up your presets if you really want to do that. You can also change things like, for example, the lighting, on your actual controller. I love the Cyberpunk, but you can see you can fiddle around, you can change your brightness, you can change around like your sound and everything like that. This is absolutely fantastic to play around with. It's really easy to do so. And then the great thing is you can also turn on, say, the mouse mode and turn on a keyboard at just a touch of a button. As you can see here on these buttons, physical buttons at the bottom. What's really cool, and you can turn them off again. But overall, the game sensor software is amazing, and you can tell it's been definitely optimized for the F1 Pro with this AMD, AI 7 inside of it. But you guys probably want to see games running on this, so I've decided to fire up a couple of games on the F1 Pro. Let me show them to you right now because they were absolutely amazing on this. So this is just a little demo here of me playing, saying Spider-Man, and you can see here I'm just swinging through. We're getting some great frame rate here. It's absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I played this on the plane. I had no problems whatsoever with it. It was fantastic. And then switching over here to GTA 5. This is the enhanced version, what you can like turn on DLS and things like this, and you can also turn on FSR, what you can turn on this console, what I'll tell you about a little bit later on. But then you can also play other games like, one of my favorite games that my partner loves to play, and I play it a bit too, is Dreamlight Valley, Disney Dreamlight Valley. This is really great to play on the go too, and this is absolutely fantastic. But something else that you guys are probably interested in is what about, say, the actual benchmarks and comparing this to, say, another device too. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a different list of different types of benchmarks out there. So first I'm going to show you Geekbench and comparing it to a Mac Mini with an M4 inside of it, just for, fun here. That's what I'm going to do. So let's have a look then at the chart right here. So what we can see right here is that Mac Mini, yeah, it is definitely out in front here than the F1 Pro, but do notice something here, and that is the Mac Mini with the M4 pulls up to 63 watts here, and obviously the F1 Pro is only pulling up to 30 watts, but just look at that difference there. We are getting a faster single core performance at 3,987, compared to 2,784, but the multi-core performance, it's very close at 14,786 to 14,418. And just for the fun of it, I've also thrown in here my 50-watt framework laptop. It also does actually have the same CPU and iGPU inside of it. And you can see here at 50 watts that it obviously pulls at 2,914 compared to 15,437. Now, obviously that is out in front there, but obviously, yeah, that's using a lot more wattage. But what I think is crazy is that the F1 Pro at 30 watts, that is more than half what the Mac Mini is, and look at the performance it can do with that. That is absolutely mind-boggling here. And just in case you wanted to know with the F1 Pro, obviously you're not going to play at 30 watts all the time because that's just going to kill the battery. But what you might want to do instead is turn on things like FSR 3.0 or other FSR, obviously to work alongside with this GPU. And this allows you to extend out your battery life, do kind of scaling, frame generation, all sorts of bits and pieces like that built into this. And obviously this will preserve your battery life, and you can also turn down the TDP with this. But just for the fun of it, I want to show you guys here Geekbench 6 again, if I actually turn down the actual wattage, and then obviously to show you what the differences are. So as you can see here, with 30 watts with the F1 Pro, it's the same results we had there, but look at 25 watts. If we actually pull down 5 watts down from this, obviously the single core performance I still think is quite respectable here at 2,556. We do lose a fair bit there with multi-core performance at 10,555, but 18 watts, so this is almost half the amount of power here. Look at that, we're still getting 2,142 in single core performance, and we're still getting 8,341 in multi-core performance. Now, that multi-core performance actually reminds me of the likes of, say, a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, the M1 inside it. It could actually achieve this in multi-core performance. And I know you guys have got M1 devices out there. You're not complaining that it's slow at all, but think about it. 18 watts that this can pull at and can do that kind of performance. That is absolutely incredible what we've got right here. But then the next thing you might be asking about is, what about graphics? Well, I decided to do Geekbench, OpenCL, and obviously here's the actual score that we've got right here compared to the Mac Mini again. So remember that Mac Mini, it's up to 63 watts here with the M4, and that gave us 37,005 here on OpenCL, whereas with 30 watts on the F1 Pro, we're actually scoring 45,763 with an 8090M. What's, crazy what's to see here. And then after this, I decided to run another graphics benchmark. This was 3D Mark Still Nomad Lite, and have a look at the frames per second we were getting here. So again, with the Mac Mini, with that M4, obviously it's got a 10-core GPU, 63 watts, it can pull up to 29 frames per second, whereas the F1 Pro, that can go up to 30 watts here, is getting 38 frames per second. So we can just see them from those initial kind of benchmarking tests. This is absolutely incredible. But let's say if we played a game. Now, what I am going to say is I played Cyberpunk Cyberpunk 2077 on this F1 Pro, and it runs beautifully on it. And also after a bit of tinkering, what I'll tell you about in a second, but I also run the likes of Cyberpunk 2077 on a, Mac Mini with the M4. Now, what I would say is I did use crossover. It's not optimized yet, but we are expecting to get Cyberpunk 2077 in the future. So do take this result with a grain of salt, because like I said, it's not fully optimized yet. But again, I just want to show you where we stand right now with this. So just looking at this chart right here, you can see that Cyberpunk 2077 1080p, this was at ultra, no ray tracing or upscaling. The average frames per second, with the 63 watts or up to that with the Mac Mini, got 24 frames per second, whereas the 31 F1 Pro, 30 watts, got 44 frames per second. Now, you might think that's not the best what you're even getting on the F1 Pro, but this is where FSR comes into play. So this is where I've turned on FSR 3.0, turned on some settings here, as you can see here. And obviously, if I ran the benchmarking kind of tool, we actually get some crazy results here. And in fact, I want to show them to you right now here in a chart. So at 18 watts at 1080p with just medium settings, we were getting 48 frames per second. So obviously that's just a little bit, more than what you were getting at ultra settings here, obviously with this one we had before when I was compared to the Mac Mini. But then at 18 watts 1080p medium settings, FSR 3 and frame gen on 2, well, this is something this is great at these iGPUs built into this. Well, we actually got 75 frames per second on average. And then if I actually turned up the TDP to maximum at 30 watts, 1080p, medium settings, FSR 3, frame gen on, we actually got 105 frames per second. And that is absolutely crazy what you can get there. Personally, I don't think you even need to have it at 30 watts. Probably you could play this easily at that 18 watts there in the middle, or if you wanted to get a little bit more, maybe push up to 20 watts. But it's great that you can get this kind of performance here with just turning on FSR 3 and frame gen. Now, obviously, I know that frame gen isn't for everybody because obviously it's doing kind of some AI sort of trickery behind the scale. But I think for a handheld kind of console, this is the thing, you're not going to want to burn out this. You want to preserve the battery life. And that's where frame gen, things like this come in, really handy on these little smaller devices like this. Obviously, if you've got a big gaming rig out there, yeah, you probably only want to turn it on a little bit. If not, you want to actually use your pure kind of power built into your GPU and obviously this. But obviously to go out and about, this is absolutely brilliant. And in fact, for battery life as well, we've actually got some estimates here of what could actually happen if you were playing, say, Cyberpunk 2077 with us and how many kind of minutes you would actually get with it. Have a look at this chart right here. And as you can see here, this is Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p high. This is with no ray tracing or upscaling, 50% screen brightness. This is the kind of what you're going to get. This is the kind of battery life. Now, with 10 watts at 165 minutes, you'd get, obviously, it's not going to be very playable. I'm going to say that the games, you're probably going to get like about 25 frames per second with this, but you get 165 minutes out of that. So, we're talking around about, say, 2 hours, 45 minutes. What's quite respectable when you think about it for what it is. But then say at 15 watts, well, you actually get 122 minutes. So just over 2 hours of battery life with this. But then at 30 watts, if you pushed it right up, you'd get 73 minutes. So, we're talking almost about an hour and a quarter, hour and 15 minutes. That is how much you're going to get out of it if you're playing at that kind of TDP. And this is why I was actually saying, that FSR 3.0 really comes handy because obviously it extends out the battery life, that you could turn down the wattage down to 18 watts, 15 watts, or even some indie games, or lighter games like that Dreamlight Valley I was showing you earlier. This would work far better on this and you'd easily get a better battery life inside of it. But overall, I am really, really impressed with the F1 Pro. And if you want to get your hands on, say, the F1 Pro here, and you want to check out some more products from OneXPlayer, well, the great news is they're having their 4th anniversary. So congratulations to you guys. And the great thing is they have a sale on right now. And in fact, you can get up to a $39 discount discount on this in buying this. So all the details for that are going to be in the description below of this video, so do check that out. And like I said, the F1 Pro, I am super impressed with this, you know, and I absolutely love it from OneXPlayer. So yeah, definitely do check this out, and it is absolutely incredible. But on that, what do you think of handheld gaming devices like this? Is it something that you're interested in? Do you have one yourself? Well, let me know in the comments below. And with that as well, guys, it's time to wrap up the video too. So if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. As always, if you want to hear the latest technology news, reviews and comparisons, make sure you subscribe to this channel and also hit that notification bell too. Until next time, guys, I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye bye.